Hi BookTube, Chelsea's Reads here. First of all, Happy New Year. Second of all, Christmas really snuck up on me, so I kind of forgot about making videos and stuff. I do work 3 jobs and go to grad school, so that might have been part of it too. So my New Year's resolution is definitely going to be working more on this channel and not just doing your typical wrap-ups and book hauls. Instead, I'm going to try to do some book tags starting for the new year. I got Star Wars on in the background, so ignore any Wookiee/droid sounds you might hear. So for this first video, I'm going to do a December wrap-up. And all my books come from the library this month. We're going to start with Ms. Marvel, Volume 4, Last Days by Wilson and Alfona. This is Volume 4 of Ms. Marvel. And the story so far is a Middle Eastern teenage girl was exposed to this mist and got the powers of Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel, and now she's an Inhuman. And the story I really liked in the first 2 volumes, and by this volume, Volume 4, I am just so over it. This was very much cheesy, very high school. There was a very touching moment, though, as she confronted her mother, and her mother and her kind of got over their little riff that they were having. But mostly everything I liked about this story is dried out. I'm no longer in love with it. The artwork is decent, though, so it is something you might check out. Maybe it'll tickle your fancy a little bit more than it did mine. Next I read Thor, Volume 1, Goddess of Fire. Yes, Goddess. Because in this one, Thor has lost his will to battle due to something Nick Fury had whispered in his ear. And he can no longer lift Mjolnir. And if you remember, Odin put an enchantment on it that only those worthy may lift and have the power of Thor. So this woman is able to lift it, and she gets the power of Thor, hence the goddess. She remains masked in this volume, so you don't know who she is. And I guess the main plot would be Malekith, the king of the Dark Elves, is working to get the skull of Lo-Fei, the king of the Frost Giants. And he's working with the Frost Giants, so this new Thor has to face the Frost Giants and the Dark Elves all in just this volume. And obviously it used to wielding Mjolnir and everybody else. And that was Volume 1. Then I read Volume 2 of Thor, Who Holds the Hammer, and that is by Aaron and Douterman, last names. So this one continues the story of this masked woman who now has the power of Thor, and Thor, who's now called Odin's son, just Prince Odin's son, is running around trying to figure out which of the women in his lives, because he knows her, which of the women in his lives are this new Thor. And Odin is obsessed with getting Mjolnir back to Asgard. So he sends the Destroyer after Thor, this Thor, female Thor. And she ends up getting help from every single female hero in the Marvel Universe. And it's this awesome battle. And then Thor just says, you know what? Or the Odin son tells this new Thor, you know what? You are Thor. You are the goddess of thunder. And he kind of lets it lie, though he is still curious. The readers do find out at the very end of this volume who the masked woman is. And it was a really nice surprise, and I really like the turn that this series took. So you should definitely try this one out. And that was the last of the graphic novels I read this month. I also gave Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell a try, because obviously everybody was like raving about it, and this is one of the most read books, and the book that I've seen the most on BookTube. and I hated it. This is probably the worst book I've read in a very long time. I would not recommend it to anybody. I just didn't like anything. The main character's name is Cather. She goes to college and she has to room with someone else. She has a twin sister that she's used to living with her whole life, and she was really uncomfortable and stuff about not living with her, and I get that, but I mean, the girl lived off of protein bars for 3 months, and I don't get that. She turned a fan fiction in as an assignment and was shocked that her professor didn't give her a good grade on it. I mean, it was just not for me. It was very much contemporary. I didn't connect with any of the characters. I thought they were very pretentious and very juvenile. It was very hard to think that this girl was actually college age when she was kind of acting like a 12-year-old. So I was not won over by the style, by the plot. It was not for me. 0 out of 5. Another book that I read that I did not enjoy was My Son Marshall, My Son Eminem by Debbie Nelson. And so yes, this is written by Eminem's mother. And I'm not a huge Eminem fan. I like a lot of his early stuff. But I thought it might be interesting because, you know, there's 2 sides to every story, and after we all kind of hated her and blamed her and judged her after hearing Cleaning Out My Closet, I was like, you know, maybe she has something else to offer us. But she just was not a good writer. She very much played the victim in every scenario she could think of. Technical difficulty, and now we're back. Hopefully this works. So, My Son Marshall, My Son Eminem was not good. Debbie Nelson was not a good writer. She did not pose a very good argument. In fact, I think she just made herself look worse, if that was possible. So maybe, if you want to give it a try, go to the library. Do not spend money on this, because it was not worth it. Thank God it was a quick read, though. It wasn't very long. You can skim some of the parts. It just wasn't very good. Next is Give a Boy a Gun by Todd Strasser. This is an older book, but it is about a school shooting. It was written not in your typical narrative format, but in like a series of interviews after the school shooting occurred. And it was really interesting. I think some of the points that they bring up in this are still very relevant today. He peppers the bottom of the book almost like footnotes with actual facts and statistics. So those are maybe a little bit dated, obviously, because I think the statistics were from 1999, 2000 era. But it was still very interesting. It's a very short read, but definitely for high school, maybe even like 8th grade, the youngest readers, I think they'd enjoy it. It was a good read. Then I read The Ranger's Apprentice, Book 1, The Ruins of Gorlin by John Flanagan. And this book was really good. I really liked it. It is your typical first book fantasy setup with your average boy, and then he's being welcomed to this new destiny as a ranger's apprentice. Not too much happened in this book. It was a lot of setup, obviously, because it's a book 1, and it was mostly his training to become a ranger. There was a battle near the end that sets up the war that's going to follow the rest of the series, but it held my interest. It was a really quick read. This came so highly recommended by so many different people, and it was worth it. So if you're into fantasy, into the kind of adventure, pick up Ranger's Apprentice, and give it a try, because I think it was really good. And for a fantasy, middle grade YA fantasy, it was just well put together. And it appeals, I think, to both boys and girls. My final 2 reads are the Animorph series, or 2 of the books in the Animorph series. First, I read book 21, The Threat by K.A. Applegate. And for those of you not familiar with the Animorph series, it is a 52 book, or the 52 main book series. They're very short. They are written for middle grade JFIC. If you're a library person, consider JFIC. But it is about a group of kids who are in middle school, and they come across this dying alien who gives them the powers to morph, to transform into any animal that they touch, and they can acquire the DNA So in this cover you see the Jake morphing into his dog. So book 21 was part 2 of the David trilogy within the series, which is they give the power to morph to another kid, and he ends up not fitting in. He's like getting a little bit violent and not following their rules. And they're trying to save the world from this evil race of slug aliens that can get into people's brains and control them. So it was very good. And then I also read book 22, which is The Solution, also by K.A. Applegate. Each book has a different narrator of the 5, and this one had Rachel. You can see her morphing a rat. This is the last part of the David trilogy, and it was probably my favorite book by far in this whole series, and that's book 22. Because it kind of explored the darker side, and the Animorphs had to make some really tough decisions about what to do with David. Now he was starting to attack them, and excuse me. This book, for being so short, really characterized the Rachel and Jake and really pushed their characters to a whole nother level. I think even Axe and Cassie showed like character growth and development. I thought that was really impressive in such a short amount of time, and they wrapped up everything that the David trilogy was covering. I will definitely be continuing on to book 23. You should try it out. So that's it for December. So Fangirl took me a little bit longer than I would have expected, and like I said, I didn't really like it. So I had a little bit of a rough month with reading, obviously, with 2 out of those 1, 2, 3, 4 books. 2 out of the 6 books being awful. But we'll see how next month goes. I'm going to do one more video today, and hopefully you watch that one too. Thank you for watching, and have a good new year.